There seems to be a slight obsession with working from home these days, and maybe that's a subject for another video. But today I'm going to take you through my home office setup, and I'll give you a few tips that might help you if you've only just escaped the corporate office and you're going to be working from in your own house. Hiya folks, welcome back to Small Business Toolbox. I'm Andy Mack, and I've been self-employed, or working for myself I should say really, because a lot of that's been limited companies and things, but I've been working for myself for a long time, and over that time I've had a lot of different home office setups. It's best part of 25 years that I've had various different home office arrangements, from the really bad, and it's all kind of evolved to where things are now. And I'll give you a tour of my current setup later on in this video, and I'll show you some of the things that I've kind of learned over time. But what I'll do first is I'm going to take you through some of the bad things that I did over the years, and hopefully you can learn from that, and then you can better understand why it's evolved to the setup that I've got now. So I'm going to fly through this quite quickly because I want to spend more time talking about my current setup rather than the old setup, but it'll make a bit more sense if you see how things have kind of evolved over time. And what you're looking at here, all the way back to like 1995, 96 thereabouts, probably my first ever home office setup that I had. As you can see, it was very kind of muso orientated, the Clavinova, giant Clavinova there taking up most of the space. The only place that I've got to put a keyboard is on the keyboard. Classic 14-inch CRT monitor, probably running Windows 95. And what I'd actually done here as well, again, as I say, it's very music orientated, but I built this little unit here out of just chipboard, just to hold things like my patch bay and effects and various bits and pieces. This was really the start of my home working and home studio setup. And then fast forward to around 2002 and it evolved to a slightly bigger setup. These giant transmission line speakers that I actually ended up building myself, because trying to buy speakers like that would have cost us a fortune and I couldn't afford it, so I just built my own. Again, as you can see, everything's kind of centered around music mostly, with the Clavinova in the middle there now. I've built this kind of shelf rack thing with a mixer on and bits and pieces. Massive 19-inch iArmor CRT monitor there, and then I'd also built this rack kind of up a height to keep things out the road. So we're not kind of getting into your traditional home office setup quite yet. We're still in the music phase of my life. Then fast forward a little bit more, all the way up to 2011 now, and you can see I've gone for a kind of laptop sitting on the desk thing. I've got my speakers now, I've got a bigger screen on the wall. Again, this is more for music production side of things, but yeah, at the time it seemed like a good idea. It actually didn't work that well. The rack has now evolved to a rack down the right hand side here for all the music gear. I've got the mixer on top of that. Pointless beer fridge that I never used. This setup did work pretty well, but as you can see, I've got nigh on no desk space whatsoever. But luckily, in this particular property, I did have a writing desk in the bedroom, and that just gave us a bit of desk space for doing paperwork and things like that. Still got the same light now. I didn't realise I'd had that for so long. That worked really well. The only problem there was that that writing desk weighed an absolute ton, and when we moved out of this property, we ended up just leaving it there because we didn't have anywhere to put it in the new property that we moved into after this one. When we moved from that property, I ended up having a little office in a bedroom. Again, it worked okay, but a desperate lack of actual desk space, and just everything ergonomically about this was bad. Bad desk height, bad chair height, bad screen height, bad speaker height. We'll come on to all of that shortly. Then by around 2013 it had evolved to this, and you can see that I'd finally managed to get the dual monitor set up, and that worked really well. But again, lots of things wrong with this in terms of the ergonomics. So the main problem is that the screens are far too low, the speakers are too low, not enough room to work, and I think around this time I was doing a lot of editing. I was doing a lot of video editing, podcast editing and other things, and I think this was really the start of my RSI started to set in from this point. This was all the way back in 2013, but this was probably the catalyst for it all. So look at this, remember this, and don't set up your desk like that. So then, if you've seen the video where I made my new desk and I realised that the RSI was going to potentially turn into a big problem if I didn't sort it out. And yeah, so made myself a nice, decent sized desk, made a monitor riser to lift the monitors up to a decent height, made some little risers to lift the speakers up as well. And this was just an enormous improvement, huge improvement on what I had before. That kind of evolved to this setup, which is essentially the same but just in a different room. Note that I've got this mixing desk here taking up lots of space and a whole rack full of equipment under here as well. And that then evolved to this, which is kind of one step before where we are now. And the big problem here was that I just didn't have anywhere to put the rack full of equipment, and really the only equipment in that rack that I was now using was this, basically it's an 8-port mic preamp sound card, glorified sound interface here. And I ended up just using that as another, I put it under the monitor just to, I had nowhere else to put it. And then I just used another piece of leftover equipment, a headphone amp, to put under the other monitor just to get them both at the same height. But bearing in mind that I didn't use that at all, so the only rack mount piece of equipment that I've now got, really, or that I now use on a regular basis, is this sound interface. And I've still got a mixing desk taking up a good area of desk space here. So it was really time to have a rethink and sort this out, because I felt like I could liberate a lot more desk space by getting the rack mount equipment out the road, getting rid of the monitor riser, using a stand for the monitors instead of a monitor riser, upgrading the monitors in the process, because, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, and of course getting rid of the mixing desk, because by now I'm just really using that as a glorified volume control, because everything's done in software now. So don't get me wrong, this was a lovely setup. I've really enjoyed working like this. It's nice having the window behind because it just gives you something to look at other than your screen, and it also means you're not getting glare on the screen off the window. But I did find I was constantly struggling for desk space. When I'm doing video edits and things, I've normally got cameras all over the place and memory cards everywhere and notebooks and scraps of paper, and the desk space is a valuable commodity, and I needed to sort that out. So this is where things have evolved to now for me over the space of 25 years or thereabouts. And I would comfortably say this is the best home office setup that I've ever had, but it's taken 25 years to get here, so don't expect that this is going to happen overnight. Obviously there's costs involved in this, and plus you need to work out what works for you. How do you work? For me, because most of what I'm doing is video editing, web editing and that sort of thing, having a good big screen with lots of screen real estate is really important. So I've gone for this Samsung monitor that has a gorgeous 3440 by 1400 display on it. It's a Samsung Q LED monitor. I'll include a link down in the description below. But this is awesome. I've got so much screen real estate to play with. I can potentially have like 3 windows on the screen at the same time. So for example, I can be working on a Word document in the middle of the screen. I can have my emails up on the left. I can have my calendar up on the right. There's just various ways of doing things. And not having, because I used to have obviously the 2-monitor setup. The 2-monitor setup was great, but it means you can never look at the center. You're always looking off to the left or the right because you've always got the bezels of the monitor in the middle. Having it done this way, so you've just got one big wide monitor and you can actually just look straight ahead, it changes everything, because it means that now I can have my keyboard straight in front of me, whereas before I always had to have the keyboard kind of off at a side because I would be looking at this monitor or this monitor. So for me, from an ergonomics perspective, it's just a way more comfortable way of working. And then of course, if I just need to get some paperwork done, and I do often need to get paperwork done, I've got loads and loads of space where I can just shove all of this out the road, and I've now got acres of desk space to do paperwork on. This particular desk, I've made this desk myself. I'll include a link in the description to when I made this. It's just old scaffolding boards, believe it or not, and it's really nice having a solid wood desk, because I think I would have struggled to use a monitor clamp like this on one of your awful kind of your cheapy IKEA hollow desks. I don't think the desk would have handled a clamp this kind of industrial, because this monitor is quite heavy, and once you're onto a clamp like that, it can put quite substantial forces on the desk. I think it could have damaged the desk. The other nice thing about solid wood is if I ever need to attach anything onto the underside of the desk, I can just screw straight into this and it's never going to cause a problem. The dimensions of this, just in case you want to know, are 1800 by about 800. So it's a pretty big area that I've got here. It probably doesn't need to be quite as big now. It needed to be bigger when I had the two monitors because I didn't physically have that much room. I could probably bring the speakers in a little bit now and survive with a slightly smaller desk, but for me, desk real estate is a really important thing. When I'm working with a lot of paperwork, maybe I'm working on a big edit and I've got notes all over the place and things can very quickly get chaotic. The more desk space you've got, the better. I use a wireless keyboard. It's nothing special, just a cheapy wireless keyboard. It does the job absolutely fine. Because I've developed RSI from using a computer mouse for too long, be very careful with that. I've made video about that. And yeah, so I ended up switching over to using graphics tablet and pen. This has been an absolute game changer. I hate using a traditional mouse now. The graphics tablet and pen is absolutely awesome. The one thing is though that you need somewhere to keep the pen, so that if you keep your pen like down there, it's really awkward getting into that position all the time whenever you pick the pen up. I just made a little pen holder, but you can probably buy them off the internet. But you need something that keeps the pen in a position very similar to how you would be using the pen if you are going to go down the graphics tablet route. The one thing about a graphics tablet is that you end up really missing the scroll wheel. And that's why, so obviously on a mouse you've got like your normal little scroll wheel that you use. You've got no real way of doing that on a graphics tablet. So that's why I use the Contour Shuttle wheel. This is an absolute game changer for me. I've got a programmable scroll wheel in the middle here. I've got a programmable outer wheel, and then I've got all these buttons that I can program up to do anything I like. So this, for me, is absolutely, it's essential to have something. You can get cheaper, smaller scroll wheels, by the way. You don't have to go for this, but I'll include some links in the description to give you a few ideas and a bit of inspiration. But if you do go down the graphics tablet route, you need some way of having a scroll wheel, or I did, and this fixes that problem. The Shuttle Pro is a glorified mouse scroll wheel, but it does a whole lot more as well. And it gets my left hand. Otherwise, my left hand would be doing nothing. So it means that my left hand can be sitting on that, doing various, so I've got like copy, paste, cut, set up on the shortcut keys there, while this is doing everything that my mouse would normally do, and that all works absolutely brilliantly. Now, the one thing about this is that you do occasionally run into applications that just don't work with a graphics tablet and pen, or maybe you haven't programmed them up, and my point is that every now and then you're going to need a mouse, and for me, a vertical mouse is absolutely essential, way more comfortable to use than a normal mouse. I would suggest everyone gets one of these, no matter whether you've got RSI or not. Get one so that you don't get RSI, because this keeps your hand in a much, much more natural position, whereas your normal mouse where your hand's like that and you're clicking all the time like that, that's how I developed RSI. It lasted nearly 2 years. It comes back all the time if I use a proper, like a normal mouse. And the vertical mouse, I never have that problem. It's a much, much more comfortable way of using a computer mouse. I think you can get them in right-handed or left-handed versions. I think this is obviously the right-handed version for me because I'm right-handed. If you are left-handed, gear up your desk for left-handed use. And this is another point worth chatting about. If you're right-handed, then if you're working with paperwork, the paperwork's probably going to be on the right-hand side of your desk. So if you sometimes have to work with paperwork, sometimes use a keyboard, make sure you've got a clear area over on the right-hand side of the desk so that you can comfortably, because otherwise you're having to kind of contort yourself to have paperwork over this side. So just arrange your desk space in a way that's comfortable for the way that you work on a daily basis. Another thing which is a total game changer for me is that I got rid of the ridiculous mixing desk that I had. I freed up a whole load of desk real estate by doing that. And that mixing desk, I used to use it all the time for audio stuff, but as audio stuff has become more and more integrated into software, I was using it as a glorified volume control. So I've got rid of it, freed up a whole load of desk space, but the one thing I did really miss was a volume control. So 20 quid off Amazon, little USB volume control. It's absolutely awesome if you're just listening to music, or if you work with audio. Having some way of adjusting your volume level easily, so that if the phone goes and you need to speak to someone, let's put that on. Now I can just press it to mute it. So if I just, I know you can set these up as shortcut keys, but for me on this keyboard, you have to do like some weird function key combination to adjust the volume. It's not very practical. For the sake of 20 quid for one of these, absolutely brilliant. Love it. Other than that, and this again, it's very key to the way that I work, but just take it into consideration. So I've got these little risers that I built to bring my monitor speakers up a little bit. With speakers, you should generally have the tweeters at eye level. I talk about the ergonomics of this in a couple of videos over on my Gosforth Handyman channel, so I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I will include links to those below. Do make sure, basic things, feet flat on the floor, get your chair height right. Arms of the chair I like to have at desk height. Monitor, center of the monitor for me is just slightly below eye level, and the monitor itself, and in this case I've spoiled myself with a curved monitor, but the monitor itself is roughly arm's length away from me, and that works really well. But obviously with an adjustable stand like this, I can move the monitor wherever I like, which is great. The risers that I built for the speaker monitors I also double up as in trays basically. So the way I do it, I've got an urgent one of stuff that I have to do all the time. I've got a less urgent one of stuff that just needs to be sorted out at some point or filed away or whatever. I've got all of my notepads that I take notes all the time. So I've got several notepads on the go for different aspects of my business. I've got scrap paper here, which I make use of scrap paper all the time. And I've got blank paper for the printer, which I've got over here. Printer is, I don't need to move at all. If I'm printing stuff, I can just grab it straight from the printer. It just works for me, more efficient way of working. I've got a little pot hidden away with all my pens and pencils and bits and pieces in. Everything else I try and keep away from the desk, but I do have a drawer over here where I keep things like stapler, hole punch, sellotape and stuff. So it's within arm's reach, but it's not cluttering up the desk. What I've also got is a USB connection, just basically a USB extender that I bring up to desk level. So if I need to plug in a memory stick or whatever, I can plug it in here very easily. And because I deal a lot with lots of different hard drives for archiving data off and stuff all the time, I've got a hard drive caddy there as well that I can shove a hard drive in, copy the data off, and it's all basically ready to go. I've also got my podcasting mic here, which I use all the time for when I'm recording videos. So if I'm recording a video and I need to record some audio over it, I can quickly grab that mic. When I'm not using it, I can just shove it off out the road so it's not getting in front of my monitor. So just a lot of these considerations, some of them are very specific to the way that I work, but hopefully you can get a few tips from that. As I say, this is the best desk setup that I've had ever. It'll probably evolve again. I'll probably make the desk a little bit smaller maybe. Depends on the room that it ends up going in our next property really. But I do like to have lots of screen real estate, and I like to have lots of desk real estate. For me, a big desk makes a world of difference. Oh, one final thing as well. I've got a couple of lights here as well. So I've got one light over this side. Again, this is more if I'm working late at night and maybe I haven't got the big lights on. So I've got a light here, so again, if I'm doing paperwork and things, so I'm not sitting in the pitch black, you can just adjust your mood lighting. And I've got another little clip-on LED light over here, which, as I say, if you're working at night time and because nighttime can be a great time, quite an inspirational time to just sit writing up articles or stories or whatever you happen to do for a living. But nighttime can be quite an inspirational time to do that. I don't like sitting with all the big lights on and everything. So all I need is it light enough so that I can actually see the keyboard, and one single LED light is generally sufficient for that. So the takeaway from all of this, for me, for the way I work, is that I'm trying to keep things as clutter-free as possible. The only things that I actually keep on the desk at desk level are my vertical mouse, which I keep hidden away. Obviously, I've got my graphics tablet and pen. I've got my wireless keyboard, and I've got my jog shuttle wheel. I've got a controller for the volume, and of course, I've got the obligatory cup of coffee. I hope you found that useful. I'll include links to a lot of the products and things that I use down in the description below. If you work from home or you've been working from home for a long time and you've got any extra tips, then please pop those in the comments below as well. I'm going to make a future video going more into the business aspects of working from home. So just kind of taking into account things like establishing a routine, making life easy for yourself if you're working from home, some of the different scenarios that I've run into that have been problematic, and really I would love to work in an office surrounded by people. One of the biggest downsides of working from home is that it is very lonely, and yeah, we'll cover that on a future video because it's quite a big topic. So don't forget to hit subscribe. In the meantime, as I say, if you've got anything to add to this, please pop it down in the comments below. Take care, folks. I shall see you next time. Tatty bye.